Hello everybody, welcome back to Road to Master. I hope you're all having an amazing day. I've just got back from a tournament, the tournament I'm playing over the weekend. I'm absolutely knackered, so today we're just going to be doing a couple analyses, whatever, of two of the games I played today. It was a three-round day, which is obviously a lot in one day. They're a bit shorter games. They are 1 hour 20 minutes plus 10 on your clock. And I got off to a bit of a dodgy start. So this is the first game we're going into. I ended up losing it. Spoiler alert. I thought I played well. It was a good game, a fun game, but it didn't quite go in my favour. So let's just jump straight into it. We'll just do it like I've played it online and just hop straight into the game review. We'll do analysis if there's any sort of lines we're struggling with. But yeah, straight in. So I was with the black pieces against a young lad who was with the white. Now I knew he played a d4, c4 before going in. So obviously I prepped the Albin counter gambit before the game. However, he played a line I wasn't quite familiar with, so I was a bit out of theory. So I ended up with a 76.8% accuracy. He had an 83.1. There's no estimated ratings on here. I'm not sure why, but yeah. So a d4, and then we get the Albin. And he's quite a talented young kid, so he obviously knew a bit of theory. With takes and then push, knight out, and then knight to c6, obviously. Now this is where it went a bit weird. He ended up playing e3. Now this is very similar to another line without the knights out. In fact, we can go into analysis and just check that out. So if they go here, it's not good for white. There's this nice little trap where you play bishop to b4, and I believe it's called the Lasker trap. And then after the bishop blocks, you can actually take this pawn. The bishop's pinned, so they can't take it. So they either take the pawn and double up, or they go ahead and take the bishop. If they go ahead and take the bishop, you take the pawn with check, and you're trying to drag the king away from defending the queen. But if they go up to e2, and then you have this cheeky little move, promote to knight with check. And yeah, that's just nasty, free stuff, really. Saying king e1, queen h4 check, and you can see how deadly this is going to be. So it's very similar to that, except the key thing is the knight is not on g1 anymore, so it's a bit different. Turns out you can actually do the same thing, because you have the knight covering your bishop now. So you can do the same thing, and that's what you're meant to do. It'll show us very, very similar, but they just take the pawn, and then we trade off. And I've got compensation for the pawn with the double isolated. Yeah, they're going to get their rook on the open file. I'm going to get my knights out in their usual sort of way, and then this bishop's going to be hitting some stuff as well. So it's an equal game after that. So I sort of wanted him to take here just to isolate, like, not isolate, but it would just be sort of nice for me to get my pieces out. Although I think he probably could take here, and then it's just sort of even. But h3 is a bit sort of nothing. I don't know if he was scared of playing or getting a bishop to g4, which doesn't really happen in the Albin anyway. So it's a bit of a wasted move, and it let me do things that I didn't obviously capitalize on, because it's given me another chance to go bishop to b4 and do this little trick. But I didn't end up doing it. I didn't think that worked, so I just sort of ignored that straight away. And I went with the usual plan of getting my knight to g6, which you'll see. And then again, they can take. But obviously he didn't want to do that. So he went bishop to e2, and that's the move I thought he would play. Going bishop to d3 doesn't quite work. because then I'm sort of free to just take this, and we're not going to be trading off queens. So I'm happy with that. And then I castle. Now it's saying it wants bishop to f5, and I'm guessing that's just to develop, because I had a bit of trouble getting this bishop out, and I ended up trading it off for a knight. And then I can sort of get this rook out, and I can capture without threat of having to take back the queen with my knight, which is all good. But I castled instead, and then he castled as well, and now I finally go ahead and take, isolate those pawns, and I'm feeling sort of good here. I'm still down a pawn, but I've got what I feel is really good compensation for the pawn in these double isolated pawns. The obvious thing is they can take, and I can take, whichever turn it is, and then they have some play on the king side. So I was a bit worried about this rook coming in, so I went with the h6. Now the computer doesn't really like that. But to be honest, I didn't know quite how to deal with this sort of threat. So if I went like bishop e6 and tried to get that out, then that looks pretty scary to me, although the computer obviously says it's fine. But yeah, it's interesting. So I decided to sort of stop that and kill that, which is a bit passive, to be fair, and it's sort of lost my compensation. The computer's saying it's 1.0 for white. And then he did the complete right thing by getting the knight out. The computer says you can take, which is, yeah, I mean, it's the computer. I can't argue with the computer, but yeah. And then I decided to go bishop to e6. I could have maybe done an a6 here. I was sort of worried about the knight coming in, which happened, especially if they trade off first. So I either wanted to play a6 or connect my rooks to my queen. So I went bishop e6 just to connect the rooks. And then after the knight came in, obviously there's so much stuff to worry about here. So I just went queen to c8 to cover everything. I'm covering the bishop as well. And then I'm sort of preparing to play an a6. The computer's it's still saying it's very passive, and to be honest, I do agree. It's not really in the spirit of the gambit to be moving your pieces on the back rank. But I felt secure in my compensation enough that I wasn't too stressed about it. And to be honest, I'm happy with them taking that, I think. I actually end up hitting a lot of stuff, so I just ended up playing an a6. And then they took. Now you can see I'm actually hitting quite a few things, like I've got knight takes. And then after knight takes, I've got that. And if they take, then I'm hitting this pawn. And it just seems quite nice for me. And it's gone back to equality here. And especially as well, I'm developing my rook and sort of claiming the open file here as well. So I'm happy with this position. And they're playing a3. I thought they were going to do this queen move straight away. But they didn't. They spent a little time. So I just got a rook out and hit the queen. And got the open file while I could. The computer's liking a knight f5, which is strange. I guess you're hitting this pawn. Queen b3, rook out, and you actually sack this pawn. Oh, because you hit the rook afterwards, and then you get this one as well, and that's really cool. And yeah, this is more like a gambit, innit? But yeah. So queen b3 here. Obviously worried about this. So rather than I didn't even consider this as a thing. I know, no clue. I went b6 just to cover this. I felt it was necessary. They're not really threatening to push while the queen's still there. But then they promptly move their queen as well. Now the problem with this is that it's guarding this again. So I felt like I had to go knight to g6 just to hit that. The problem with knight g6 is that this is a bit loose after they push. Like if they take and take, or if you like, you know, take and then take again, and it's a bit loose with the queen coming in, especially if they get like a knight there or something. I'm not really sure, but it sort of worried me afterwards. And then they go ahead with the c5 push, which was coming for ages. And we just pushed b5. I didn't think I could take that, especially after knight takes. Obviously, you can't take with the queen because of the knight is a bit dodgy, but apparently you can. And I think I missed a lot of chances to actually claim back the pawn and tried to keep the compensation for too long, if you get me, and it ended up working against me. Here it was quite funny. The young lad tried to on me. Obviously, just slipped his mind. He knows the rules and all that. He's a very strong player, so it was probably just early morning things which we were all feeling because it was very early. But he goes ahead and plays a4, which I thought, and then I play a b4, and I'm trying to just lock this up on the dark squares, which will help me in the end game against the light square bishop. But again, the computer just wants to take this pawn, which I get. So after you've hit the queen there, it moves there, and I just take it and then lock it up. Again, it wants the pawn, which you'll see why it's a big mistake sort of here, because they've got e6, which I didn't see at all. I think I probably would have taken that if I saw e6, but e6 is terrifying. The problem is they're threatening to take, and they're threatening to push as well with the fork on the two rooks. So I'm a bit worse for wears here. So I sort of decided to sack the exchange for a bit of compensation. I went knight e5, hitting the knight and the bishop. It's wanting just to take, which I knew probably was the best move, but this looks sort of interesting. So after take, after takes, f takes, bishop takes, and you just move your king back, and you get the pawn. So it's interesting. I mean, white's probably winning here. They're up a pawn, and they've got really good pieces. So it's a slow death, and that's the worst sort of loss. Like, I would rather go out swinging with an interesting position than have a slow grinding, lost position, that you're just fighting to hope they make a mistake. It's not the way I like to do it. If I'm losing, I want to go out in fireworks, So I decided to go for the exchange, and knight takes completely right. Knight takes, and you see here I'm hitting the bishop, and I felt after I got this bishop, this knight's really strong. So I thought it was potentially adequate compensation, and then they took on the f1. If they took with d, so much better, because then I'm not like it's trading off it's trading off the rook, obviously. I'm not getting my king to a better square as well, so it's just better, and it don't come with check as well, which is important. But they took inwards, and I took with the king. We'll go back on game review, and then they moved the rook up, which is perfect. This pawn's vital. You need to defend this. You're not too worried about this one. So he did exactly the right thing. And I just took this pawn as well. c5 is, now that I think about it, better here. Because my plan is to get the knight back there with a c5 push. C6 push, sorry. And that's a bit of a fortress, and it's really quite strong and quite cool. But the problem is they themselves can play c6, which you didn't quite see. But it's just absolutely devastating. My knight's actually gone from super strong to super weak. And it wants knight back there just for the whole idea they can push c6. But if I manage to get c6 in, then this is as I say, quite strong. And yeah, I managed to do that. So they wanted rook there, which is interesting. No clue. But c6, and then this is 1.8, so we're still down a pawn, and we're down the exchange, but it's interesting. But yeah, apparently f6 doesn't work. It wanted g6. That's one of the moves I'll never understand. I guess you're keeping hold of this square, and then you're getting your king around this way. Makes sort of sense. Because the rook immediately comes in, and I have to defend this pawn. So I go rook c8. And then king there I thought was a really nice move. Computer's not preferring it, but it just stops any ideas with the fork here. So yeah, king there's what I thought was best. it's like in rook there straight away, but they end up going rook there. And I move my rook up to c7 just to stop any checks coming in. And then he does the exact right thing if he wants to play, I think, which is the exchange. But the computer says it's a blunder for some reason. And it says it's drawing. I didn't see any sort of play for him with the rooks, especially if it comes in like this. I can bring my knight back to sort of e7. And then this seems drawish to me. Oh, apparently you go there, but then I just go back. So that seemed drawish, which is why I thought you should sack the exchange. But why doesn't sacking the exchange work? What was the better move? Rook d8. Best move. Show moves. h5. Oh, and you go after this pawn. Ah, makes way more sense. Makes way more sense. So I just take. And then apparently king e6 straight away is better for some reason. I thought that was scary with the check. Then you can also maybe like push as well. And then maybe they're picking up this one. So I went rook there just to stop the push. But apparently that goes from drawn to lost. If the king goes upwards, what happens? King e4. And then I don't know. Apparently it's drawn. I'll just take their word for it. I don't quite know why. Oh, because you're trading off rooks. You're trading off rooks. Okay. So the rook sort of has to take. They could go there, but they're getting kicked about a lot. And then you've given up the open file. So they take. And you play this f5, which is interesting. I'm guessing you're just trying to get the king away from this side. And you go this side and they go this side. But yeah, this is super interesting. They've got this super dangerous pass pawn. But then you've got the pawns to make a pass pawn as well. So yeah, it's just two sides. And I'm guessing you both promote. And then it's a queen versus queen sort of situation. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. But I went rook there, and then you can see now I don't have the rook coming across because of the pawn, which makes a lot more sense. And then the king's just slowly going to get its way over here. And to be honest, the rest is just sort of plays itself. There's not much thinking. I thought maybe if I can trade the rooks off and the queen, maybe I've got some drawing chance. You know, a pawn on the H file draws against the queen. However, they can actually just sack the queen for the pawn, and then the king's close enough to pick up these pawns and just promote them again. So, yeah, that was a really cool game. I went into the tournament sort of knowing I was going to use it to try out my new openings, because I've not had a chance to properly test them out. So I was going in well aware that possibly I could lose every game. And yeah, I think I played well here. I just missed a few things, which is fine, you know. Sometimes you do. But yeah, the next game in round 2, I ended up losing in a pretty spectacular way. Again, it was a new opening. It was the Caro Khan, but they played a strange variation I've not seen before. I overcommitted, just got destroyed. So it's not really worth looking at. But game 3 was super interesting, and we'll have a look at that now. Yeah. So again, I was black against a young girl who's super talented as well. There's so many juniors in the area that are just so talented, and it's mind blowing to see. But yeah, so accuracy, I got an 82.1. She got a 70.4. And it was a London, so I sort of knew she was playing a London as well. Now, I don't think I've showed you what I'm playing against a London at the minute. It'll probably change when I get a few more coaching sessions in. But I just saw this on a YouTube video, and if you follow Will Grafe, FIDE Master Will Grafe, who's basically like a Gambit guy on YouTube, he does super like out of nowhere gambits, super like dubious but super interesting, super strong, tricky stuff. He's one of my favorite chess YouTubers, so please check him out if you haven't seen him. If you're interested in gambits at all, everything he does is just, I mean, it works at master level, which is crazy, you know. But this is a little thing against a London. So in the video, you play knight f3 e6, but because I'm playing against the Queen's Gambit with an Albin, I'm starting off with d5, and if they go into a London, it can transpose sometimes. And if not, I just play it as a London. So I'm playing d5, and then if they go into a London, I'm playing knight f6, and then v6. And we've sort of got the setup here for the opening. If they go e3, and I can go knight to e4. So in the actual one, you don't have this pawn out. So technically, yes, you are a move behind. But in a lot of the lines, you move that pawn anyway, so a lot of the time it does work itself out. And the main line is, I think, bishop there or knight out. Either way, it's super tricky. But she went with c3, and you can see this has gone from 0.6 for white to 1.1 for black. So it's a huge mistake. Sorry. And the whole idea is you go ahead and play g5. Looking to sort of trap this bishop in, and you might say, oh, the bishop's not getting trapped at all, you can make room for it, and that's the whole point as well. So after the bishop moves, you play h5, and then you take it with the knight. And the whole purpose of this is how super weak this pawn is, and how easy it is for you to start an attack. So that's the whole point of it. So the king goes to f2, which is, I think, the right move. And then I played h6. At this point, I'm not really sure, because in the Will Grafe video, he sort of says general ideas of what to do. And to be honest, I didn't really pay attention that much at this bit, because it's not the interesting stuff, is it? But I played h4, just trying to get my bishop up on g3, which happens anyway. And you can see already how the king's in the middle of the board. And it's going to get even more crazy, because I play f6, which is, now that I look at it, I think as soon as I played it, I realised it was a bit of a mistake. Because you're letting this bishop check you, I probably should have done like a knight c6 instead. But the whole point is I'm looking for this e-pawn push. So after the check, which apparently the computer doesn't like, it wants to break with c, which is interesting. I go king up to e7. Now in a lot of the lines, you go king to d7. But I need to keep this sort of bishop open, I think. So I went to e7 instead. And then that's a blunder, apparently, because you can actually trap the bishop. Now, I saw this. I was just a bit hesitant to do so. You leave a few holes. And especially with your king in the middle of the board, I thought it was a bit dubious. Like takes, push or something. Looked interesting, so I was a bit hesitant to do that. So I went instead with knight c6, and that's gone from 3.4 to 0.9 for black. So it's still winning for us. Well, winning's a generous term, really. And then she goes knight f1, and that's a miss because you're still obviously losing the piece. But I'm not going to play that. And the whole point is you're kicking the bishop out of its outpost here, which is what I thought she was going to do. So I just moved back to d6, because they're still not breaking anything with that. They would need to go rook there, but as we see, rook there, I go queen g8. Just to hold this again, it's hitting the bishop, and everything's quite solid. And now the bishop's come back to d3. I'm thinking I need to make some play here. I need to do a break. It's obviously dubious because both our kings are in the middle of the board with the queens on. And if they can get some queenside counterplay, maybe I'm under attack. But I figured this pawn was strong. This bishop's strong. This queen is strong. This bishop's going to be strong if this moves. So I was feeling good enough to play e5, which turns out to be the right move. And after takes, it actually wanted knight takes. And I get that now. It stops your bishop sort of being blocked off, and it stops them sort of playing e4, which is their threat to sort of lock things up, which is what she did, which is great for her. And I go ahead and take it. Taking is gone from 1 for black, not 1.0 for black, to equality. And it just wanted bishop to e6. So it sort of disinterests them. I don't know the word. It sort of stops them wanting to take it. So bishop takes, yeah, and then I go there. So it gets super interesting here because I'm hitting this rook. So they're going to go ahead and block with the knight, which is their only move. Otherwise, I'm just completely crushing with a queen takes with check. And I'm looking at this open file, and I'm thinking maybe I can get some sort of play on the queen. And I go bishop to d7 because there's a lot of things going on here. You've got knight check there. You've got knight check there. You've got bishop takes. You've got knight takes. You've got potentially a queen sort of coming in somewhere as well. And I was like, I'm pretty scared. And I want to develop. I didn't want to double up my pawns there. And I felt after bishop takes, we're a bit better. And that's what ended up happening, luckily. It says knight there was the best move. So I'll have a quick look at that. Yeah. And then there, yeah. So I was more scared about this side, but this side is still just as good because you've got potentially some discovers with the queen. Yeah, hit the queen, takes, and yeah, you're probably going to end up trading off queens here. And this is actually better for black because this is super weak. And after that, this has gone from a strength to a weakness, which is really interesting. But that's not what happened. Luckily for me, bishop takes, and then queen there's queen e1 is really interesting as well. It's gone from 1.8 to 2.6, so it's a bit of a mistake. But it's hitting that, which is super interesting. It comes with check as well, and it's threatening to push as well. So what do you do here? I was seriously sort of worried about this pawn because these two in an endgame, if they can get past both, if like white can pick up this pawn, these two are going to steamroll me. So I was worried about that. Again, they've still got check ideas, especially hitting that afterwards. This is still hanging, and it gets super crazy. So what do you do here? I went rook d8. Now you might be thinking, what the hell is rook d8 doing? You're completely just losing the pawn, and you just said these were going to steamroll you. But the idea is that you're blocking off the king, and it's quite a little sneaky move. And if white gets greedy, which happened, you end up just losing sort of on the spot, which I was really proud of finding. And that's gone from a 2.6 to a 6.1. So they needed to play there, and that's if you see the idea. So we'll play the best move here. And then that's just defending the pawn, I guess. But bishop to b5 is the whole idea, which I saw from rook d8. I'm tempted to say I saw the whole thing from rook d8. But where's the king going? It can't go here. It can't go here now. If they push, I'm going to take, and then knight takes. The queen's covering it as well, so it's the same thing. It doesn't particularly matter. In fact, it's worse for white if they push. So where's the king going? It can either go to here or here. If it goes here, you're pinned with the knight, which is super scary. But if you go here, you're wide in the open. So what do? And she decides to go to f3. It's actually wanting to block the push, which we can have a look at. Bishop takes. Oh, and it's not taking with the knight, and you sort of end up in a similar position. But the difference is, if the king ever comes here, if you check now, you're actually blocking your rook, which is an interesting little twist. And yeah, I didn't know how to continue here. I'm still down a pawn. I can't check again without letting pressure off the e2 square, and the king can escape back. If I go there or there, the knight can sort of block. either knight as well, and that comes with check as well, which is super scary. If I go that way, the same thing applies with check, and I'm no better for it. So I thought for it must have been 15-20 minutes here, and I come up with this really nice move, Queen G5, and I'm actually so proud of myself that is the best move. And the point is, you're threatening mate here. You're threatening to maybe take this with a pin on the queen. You're threatening checks. You're threatening to take this, and it's just super, super cool. It's a nice sort of little move. You might think you have to deliver a check here, but you don't. And credit to her, she found the best sequence of moves. Knight check, obviously. Now, I think you can check with either knight, but that one's obviously hanging, so it's probably better to check with that one. This is actually a mate in 10 now. So she checks there, which is amazing for her. And I just moved my king up. And you'll see now, there's actually no more checks. And I saw this all from rook d8 as well. Actually, no, I didn't. No, I didn't. That's a lie. That's a lie. I saw the check. And then queen g5 is where I started my calculation. I saw the rest from queen g5. So yeah, king up is super cool. Check, you just lose your piece. There doesn't work out tactically because I still have the mate. Even though it's a check, you can just take with the bishop. And then you're down a pawn if you want to defend this mate. Not a pawn, down a piece. So g3 is absolutely the right thing to do. Stopping the mate there. Now, I was tempted now to take h3 and potentially use the pin some way, but I don't think that quite worked. Obviously, you've got the same ideas of check. You've got the idea of a rook coming in there, and potentially there's some ideas of e4 as well. But I settled with bishop takes knight, which I was super proud of finding. The computers actually wanted rook d3, which is probably slightly better. Mate in 5, it's saying. Oh no, yeah. It's saying, yeah, it's about the same. And after knight takes, so, oh, gosh. Spoilers. So it's wanting knight check and just give up a piece. But after knight takes, it's actually mate in 5, which I saw after queen g5. So I saw that however many moves in advance, which I was super proud of. Yeah, and I thought maybe you could push here. But it turns out you can just check on f6, and now the knight's no longer supported to block. So where's the king going? Oh, it's got to go back there. Okay, yeah, it goes back there. But now you've got a new wall, so you don't have to worry about the bishop covering this square. So you can just go ahead and check, which is what happened. And now you can do a few blocking moves with the queen and stuff, but it doesn't really matter. And then rook takes h3. I was super happy about seeing. It's a pretty obvious puzzle, but it's nice to find it in a game. And obviously king takes is the only move, forced. And then you go ahead with rook check. After the king moves, that's mate actually, but I went on with rook g8 and then queen h8 just for the ladder mate, sort of simple stuff. And yeah, I was super happy with that little sequence there that I spotted all the way from queen g5, which again in itself is a really subtle move, and I was proud of finding. But yeah, I was worried for a bit in the middle game because it seemed sort of dodgy with the king out in the opening. But yeah, I was happy with how I managed to make it work, and the power of these two bishops as well was super cool to see. But yeah, I mean, wow, what a game that was. She should be super proud of herself for seeing all these defenses. I mean, she clearly has a future in the game, you know, as do a lot of the juniors in the area. But anyway, that's my sort of highlights of today, really. Yeah, I'm blooming knackered. Not gonna lie to you all. But same again tomorrow. Well, it's not the same again. We've only got 2 games tomorrow, so it should be a bit easier. And we'll either do a puzzle rush, or if the games are particularly good, we'll go over the games again. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed watching that. It's cool to see. Well, I think it's cool to see. It's cool to talk about games that I've spent a lot of time on, because oftentimes I spend like maybe 30 seconds per move in the rapid that we do online. So moves that I spent a few minutes on and I know the ideas inside and out, stuff like that. It's cool to sort of talk about and explain my thought process. And I hope you guys sort of enjoy that as well. So without further ado, please like if you liked, please subscribe if you really liked, and I'll catch you guys all tomorrow. Bye bye.